Welcome to Dan's Crypto Adventures. Today I thought I would do a video on power supplies, and we're going to take a look at what the options are and what we need to look for that makes a good mining rig. So the focus of today will be power supplies for mining rigs, but everything we go over would work just fine in a desktop computer, and it would definitely be relevant to someone building a gaming computer or something along those lines. So let's get into it. There's a bunch of factors we need to think about. One of the first things you'll notice when you start looking at power supplies is modular, sometimes called full modular, versus semi-modular and non-modular. So non-modular is the older type. That is like this one right here. And what that means is that the cables are not removable. You cannot take any of these out. They come pre-installed, and this is what you get. The downside of this is, let's say you need these cables over here and you don't need these. Well, these are going to be there anyway. So if you're building inside of like a gaming computer and you're tight on space, these could be in the way, could block airflow, because generally what you do is kind of coil them up and zip time, as flat or as you can, and then out of the way, more out of the way as you can. But it's not possible to take them out or get rid of them. And then when you get this into if you were to put this in a mining rig, the challenge there is, if you've seen a mining rig, there's wires everywhere. And so if you can cut down the number of wires, then that would be beneficial. So this is non-modular. This is the older variety. If you buy a high-end power supply now, chances are it's going to be semi-modular or fully modular. But these are still around, and it would work fine. There's no reason you could not use these. The next example I have here is modular, fully modular. And so when you get it, there are no cables at all coming out of it. On the back of the power supply, you have all of these plugs, or you can plug various things, wires into there. And then when you get the power supply, you get the power supply itself, and then you get a whole bunch of wires to go with it. And this isn't all the wires. This is only some of them. There's more that are in the case, the package that I got this in, that are not included here. These are just the wires that I need for Mining Rig 2, which is one of my rigs that has 3 graphics cards in it. So that right there is what I need for that one rig. So this is fully modular. So the difference between this and non-modular, this and semi-modular, is that semi-modular will have some of the cables always attached. And so generally is going to be the main board, so the 24 pin and the, that's not it, and the CPU pin. This particular power supply has a 4 pin attached to it, which is the older size. Most modern CPUs require 8 pin. But for a semi-modular, again, the 24 pin and the CPU pin, generally these two cables would be wired up just like this, where they're always there. You cannot remove them. And then the semi-modular ports would be on the back here for your other connection types. So you can use any of these. It's just you're going to have wires kind of no matter what if you go with the semi-modular or non-modular. So now let's look at the different kind of cables that are available. So I'm just going to grab these here kind of out of random. So this here is the first one that I grabbed. This has SATA connections. And so this is the end that plugs into the back of the power supply. And so if you look at this connection, it's got 6 pins on it. And if you look at the back of the power supply, this area right here has 6 pins. And right here it says for peripheral, floppy drive, or SATA. Then down below, these here have 8 pins. So those are for the PCI plugs. We have the CPU plug, and then the main board power goes in right there. And so this particular one has 6 plugs, so it can only go in the place that has 6 plugs. And then the other end, we have 4 connections here. These are SATA power connections. Remember, if you're building a mining rig, you do not want to use any more than 2 SATA connections for a PCI riser. So this one has 4, so you would want to use 2 and not the other 2. You don't want to put anything in there. The gauge of wire that is in these cannot handle that much power going through it. So these will plug into the bottom of the risers for each graphics card that you have. Also, if you have an SSD, one of these will plug into that as well. If you go with something like Simple Mining OS or something on those lines, you most likely have a USB thumb drive and not an SSD. So that is one type of cable that comes off. This right here is another one. So on this end it has kind of the 8 pins, which again would plug into the back of your power supply where it says for PCI. All of these are 8 pins, so that's the only place this can go. And on the other end, we have, this is actually the CPU, I'm sorry, this is the CPU cable. On the other end, we have what's called 4+4. So it's got 4 pins on one side and 4 pins on the other side. So you can plug in, like the older main boards, older CPUs only needs 4 pins. More modern CPUs need the 8 pin. And so the way this works, you can kind of push these together. They kind of clip together like so. And then now you have an 8 pin. So this CPU cable here can go into a 4-pin CPU main board or 8-pin. So that is one. Next we have this one right here. So this end is blue, this is 8-pin. So this would plug into these 8-pin plugs right here. And then on the other end, it has 2 options. It has so that right there is a 6-pin that can be used for graphics cards. This is called a 6+2, so it's also got these 2 separate ones that, just like the other cable, you kind of clip those together. Now you've got an 8-pin. And this particular one has 2 plugs on it. They're both 6+2. Some graphics cards have no pins on the top, no power cables connections on the top. Some have 6 pins, some have 8 pin, some have 2 8 pins, and some have 1 6 pin and 1 8 pin. So these 6+2 are great because it gives you the most options available. So that's one type there. And then we have, here's another static connection. So this one again has 4 static connections on it. Then we have, this here is the main board connection. So this end here plugs in the back of the power supply where it says main power, 24 pin. And then on the other end, we have a 20+4 pin that plugs into the main board. Just like the CPU, the 20 pin is kind of the older motherboards would require that. Most modern motherboards you use 24 pin, so you kind of clip those together like so, and now you've got a 24 pin connection that plugs into the main board. So that is that right there. Next we have this option here. This plugs into the main board. It's a plugs into the power supply with this 6 pin. And on the other end we have these 4 connections. Now this one has 2 SATA connections, which are right there. And this also has some Molex connections. So it's got 2 Molex on there. Molex is kind of an older style. You really don't use that very much anymore, at least for mining. Sometimes it's used for fans and things like that inside of a case, but for mining you probably won't use that. But it is available. If you need it for something, it's there. And then I've got 2 more cables here that again just have plug into the power supply and then have 6+2 connections on this end. I've got a couple of those. So that's kind of modular versus semi-modular versus non-modular, and some of the different wire types that we have here. So now I'm going to carry the camera around and show you the top of some graphics cards to see, kind of see what you look for to know if you need 6 pin, 8 pin, or what you need on that. So let's walk around. So this here is the first rig I want to show you. This is what I call miner 1. So it's right there. And so this has a mix of 1070s and 1070 Ti's. So if you look here, these right here, these are some Zotac minis. These have like 8 pin, so they have 1 8 pin connection on those. These back here have 2 8 pin, and then these over here have 2 8 pin. So you need to look at the top of the cards to see what pins they have. Something we'll talk a little bit more about here in a little bit. So those are kind of some options there. Then let's go over to miner 2 that I have here. So this does not have a power supply in it right now because I just showed you there on the desk. But if we look at these power graphics cards, so these are 2 1080 Ti's and 1 1080. So if you look on the top of there is this one here has two 8-pins, two 8-pins, and this one has one 8-pin and one pin. Which is why one of the reasons the 6+2 is my favorite, because it has the most options. You can plug it into a 6-pin or 8-pin, and so it just seems to be more versatile. So let's go back over here to my desk. Alright, so that's kind of what you look for. Now let's kind of go over to my laptop and look at some things on there. Let's talk a little bit about efficiency and how big of a power supply do you need. This power supply right here, for example, is 1,000 watts. This one here is 400 watts, I believe. So this is 400. So which one do you need? So again, let's jump to my laptop and we'll take a look at that and see if we can't figure that out. Okay, and so now we are on my laptop, and so let's pull up a couple of websites. So the first one here I want to talk about is how do you decide what wattage to use. You can get power supplies ranging from 350, 400 watts all the way up to 1600 watts. It's pretty common, and then there are even some that are out there that are more than that. So how do you know what to get? So here's a website you can use that will help you with that, and we'll run through this and kind of see how it works, and then we'll talk about how you need to adjust this for mining purposes. So this is a Cooler Master website. If you just Google power supply calculators or something like that, you'll get a few options. Here's one on Cooler Master's website, which I really like. One of the reasons I like it is under video cards. It allows you to select 8 video cards. So you can have 4 in this grouping right here and 4 in this grouping right here. The one disadvantage is that you can only have 2 different types of video cards. It will not figure out more than that. But it considers like a 1080 Ti, all 1080 Ti is the same, and all 1070 Ti is the same. So again, as long as you have 2 different video cards here, you can do 8 total cards, and it works pretty well. So let's go ahead and run through one of my mining rigs and kind of show you guys what it has and how it calculates its power usage. So we've got Intel CPU, we got 1151, the 4400. So there we go. I'm just gonna leave all this stuff stock. CPU utilization, it's pretty low, but I'm gonna leave it a little bit higher than it is in reality. I got 1 stick of memory, 4 gigs DDR4. This particular rig, I have 4 1070 Ti's and 2 AMD 1070s. So I got 4 1070 Ti's, 2 1070s. Storage, there's none. I use Simple Mining OS, so there's no hard drive. If there is, you could plug in your hard drive here. Any optical drives, PCI Express cards, again, this is a mining rig, so we generally would not have those. PCI cards, Bitcoin mining modules, other devices. So this runs on a USB drive, so we got to have that. Keyboard and mouse, not really, but again, we'll leave it connected just to be complete. Fans, I don't have any fans plugged into this. Some people do hook up a bunch of fans kind of in front of the cards, and that's fine. And this is where you kind of input that information. I do not have liquid cooling. Computer utilization, again, for miner, we're talking 24 hours. So this form would also work if you were doing like a gaming computer. This would be a great way to figure it out as well. You would just change your computer utilization and maybe the CPU utilization. So if you're using a high video quality game, then the CPU utilization might be pretty high as well as the graphics card. So now we just hit calculate, and so this particular rig, it says it will be max load at 1201 watts, and so that's what it's predicting. And then they're of course recommending a 1500 watt Cooler Master product. You obviously don't have to go with that, but the information we're looking for here is 1200 watt, and the recommended PSU wattage is 1301. So they're saying we need at least 1300 watts in the power supply to be able to efficiently operate this computer. Now, how close is this to reality? Right now, I've got it running Simple Mining OS, so it's just on a USB stick. Back when I first built this, I did have this running on an SSD, and it was running the same setup, same cars, just running on an SSD and Windows, and it was actually pulling about 1150 watts at that time, and that was with no under voltage or anything like that. You're not messing with any of the power voltage for any of the cars, just straight out of the box. And so that's what it was, about 1150. We'll call it 1125 just to kind of average it out so we have a number. And then right now, this rig, I have Wemo, so you guys can't see it, but on my phone, I can pull up this rig, which I'm doing right now, and see what wattage it is using. So right now, the same rig is using 736 watts. So why does it go from this prediction of 1201 down to 736? Well, the reason is we undervolt our cards. So I'm going to log in real quick to my Simple Mining OS log in here and show you guys this card. Alright, so I'm in here. So this miner 1 is this particular card. If we go over here under overclocking, I have all of these cards at 105 watts. So you can see my overclocking here, but they're all at 105 watts, so that's limiting the wattage that those particular cards can use. So in this case, I'm going to be using less. So it's kind of hard to know when you're new as to what wattage a particular card needs. So my advice is simply go with this right here. This is, use this right here is what you should aim for, and you'll be fine. Now, one thing also to remember is, like this rig here, there's actually 2 power supplies. There's not just one. So you could get 1 power supply to run this, but you can have issues with the number of connections and cables that come off of it. And so in this case, I chose to go with 2 power supplies so that I would have enough cables for it to make all the connections to all the graphics cards. And you will talk about that in the next step as to all of the different connection types and variables there that you need to consider when you are buying a power supply. So this right here is, again, what I would look for this wattage for this particular rig. So before you start building, you need to kind of look at this and pick out what cards you want and how many of each to be able to, kind of predict this. So there's that website. So let's get ready to move on to the next item we need to talk about. Okay, so another item I'd like to talk about is efficiency of a power supply. Do you need gold? Do you need platinum? What efficiency do you need there? So here is a little calculator here I found, PSU platform database. I have no idea how legitimate this is or how accurate this is, but it seems to be pretty well made. It's maintained, and so we're going to use this just to see how it compares. So let's use my miner 1 right here. So right now it is using 736 watts. Let's say you have a gold power supply. Electricity in my area is about 11 cents per kilowatt, and full load 24 hours, and then calculate. And so what this does is it estimates you will spend $815. I will spend $815 per year on this rig right here running with a gold power supply. If I jump up to the platinum, then I would save $18 a year. If I go to the titanium, I would save $27 a year. So as you can see, a platinum power supply might cost $20 or $30 premium to get it. You're saving $18 per year here. So it may not be worth it to you. That's one of those decisions that you need to make. When we start looking at individual power supplies, one thing you'll note is, which I'll again go over here in a few minutes, is that your power supply, your gold, will have 1 warranty, usually 5 years or 7 years. And then once you go to platinum, it'll generally jump to 10 years. And so a lot of times I choose to go with platinum just because of that extended warranty. I feel like there's higher quality components in it. And so the manufacturer is more confident that it's going to last longer with 0 issues. And so if my computer is down, my miner goes down for 1 day, well, then I've lost $20. So to me, it's worth it going to the platinum. It's a little bit more of an investment up front, but for that reliability, that peace of mind, a lot of times I choose to go with that. But that's a decision that you can make for yourself. A lot of people go with the gold power supply. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's just one of those decisions, many decisions along the way that you need to make. So I did want to show this here real quick. Again, this is a PSU platform database. It's called the Orion PSUDB.com efficiency calculator. So again, it seems pretty legit. I don't have any idea who these people are, or how accurate this is, but it seems pretty legit. So I'm using it. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at here is the pins on the graphics cards. So I'm going to run through a couple of just kind of random graphics cards here and show you guys what we need to look for. So remember, when you start building a system, you start picking out your power supply, you need to have a good idea of what graphics cards you're going to use and how many. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to pick this one at random. This is an RX 580 by Sapphire, and we're going to go through the pictures here. So what I'm looking for is a picture showing the top of the graphics card at the back side of it. This location right here. This is where you're going to find some additional power plugs that need to plug into the graphics card from the power supply. And these vary greatly by manufacturer, by the processor that's in it. If it's AMD, Intel, or AMD and NVIDIA, whoever it is, it varies quite a bit. So you've got to be sure and look at it carefully. What I like to do actually is pick out what cards I want and then go through and just on a piece of paper, scrap piece of paper, write what I need. So this particular one, this again is an RX 580 Sapphire, and this particular one, if you look right here, there's two plugs. One is an 8-pin, this first one right here, and then one's a 6-pin. So this has an 8-pin and a 6-pin on it. We're going to go to another 580. I've already put the picture on this, and this one has one 8-pin. So this one only has one. So let's go to a, what is this? This is a GTX 1080 Ti. Let's go to the pictures for it, and look, it's got two 8-pins. Then you can even have a 1050 Ti's, for example. They have none. This one right here, the EVGA 1050 Ti SC Gaming doesn't have any. But then here's a 1050 Ti by MSI that has one 6-pin. So again, you got to be really careful about what you pick out for this. One of the things that, kind of recent things that a lot of power supply manufacturers are doing is including what's called a 6+2 plug. And so it's one plug that can either plug into a 6-pin slot or an 8-pin slot. It's called 6+2. And so that's one of the things we need to look for and literally just count how many there are included with the power supply. So again, pick out what you like, go through the graphics cards, what you would like to use, and literally count how many of these there are. You need to know exactly how many you need. If you're unsure, first time build, maybe you should just assume there's going to be two 8-pins on every one of them. And so, which means when you look at power supplies, you would need to include two 6+2 pins on for every card. So for example, this 6-car rig, I would need to plan on having 12 6+2 plugs. On the power supply. There's also some adapters and things you can get. I'm really personally not a big fan of those. So if you get a power supply that a straight plug, will plug into your graphics card, I always think that's the better solution. So anyway, you need to go through, count these, see how many you need. And now we're going to look at power supplies and where the manufacturers show that information and how you know exactly how many connections there are with the power supply. Alright, so now we're going to start looking at some power supplies to see what we need to look for on the specification pages for the different options that are out there. So I've gone ahead and gone to, for this example, I'm just going to Newegg. They have a pretty good search function. You can search for, the wattages and the efficiency rating and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty helpful. But I'm just going to use it too. I can flip between a bunch of power supplies really quick and show you guys the specifications on these. So I pulled up a couple of just random power supplies up here. I'm not condoning any of these. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying they're bad. These are just some examples that I'm kind of pulling up to show you guys. So we've, this what I have here in miner 1. It would need 12 6+2 pins for it to be able to power all of the graphics cards. And so what you want to do is you want to go to the page, roll down here to specifications, and then we're looking for PCI Express connectors. And so this particular one has two 6+2s. So this is only a 700 watt power supply, so it's not very big, so it doesn't have very many of these. When you get into higher wattages, they have a bunch more. But this right here is what you're looking for. 2 times 6+2 means it has two of those cables. So this obviously would not be very useful for a mining rig, because you're going to want to have a lot more than that. So that really would not work. But here's another example. Here's an EVGA. This is a gold right here. And so again, go down to specifications. This one here has 4 6+2. Now this is a 650 watt. It may not be big enough for most mining rigs. If you have a small rig, maybe 4 cars, something like that, this may or may not be an option. But here is where you would look for that particular one. And then you can also get into some really big ones. Here's a 1600 watt. See, this is the gold version specification. So this one has 9 8-pin, and it's telling you that all of those are 6+2. And it's also got 5 6-pins. So depending on your combination of cards, this may work. This may work for one rig. This may have all the connections that you need. So as long as the wattage is correct and it's got the right pins, then you're good. Here's another example, EVGA 750. This particular one is gold. It says right there. So again, let's go down to specifications. 6 PCI Express connectors, and they're all 6+2. So this one here, for my particular rig, this would, if I had 2 of these, 750 watt, that'd be about 1500 watt total. So that'd be more than enough to run this rig. And I would have enough of these PCI connectors, because I would need 12 of these. If I have 2, then I've got 12, so I'm good. Another thing you're going to need, which usually isn't a problem, is the SATA power connectors. So if you're running an SSD or a hard drive, you're going to need obviously the SATA power, but also the risers. When you buy a riser, most of those have 6 pins kind of built into the back of them, and then they usually come with an adapter that goes from 6-pin down to a SATA. And so you could use these SATA connectors here to plug into that 6-pin, that connector, into the 6-pin on the riser. Just to remember, the rule of thumb there, though, is you do not want one cable of SATA connectors plugged into more than 2 risers. Some of those cables off the power supply will have 4, some will have 3, and some will have 2 of the SATA connectors. Only plug in 2 of those 2 risers. Even if it's got 4, you don't use 2. You only use 2 of those plugged into the riser cards. The riser cards. So that's another item we need to look at. So the next thing I'd like to look at, which is may or may not be important to you, is one of the things that I always look at, and that is the warranty that comes with the product. These range anywhere from a year, 3 years, to 10 years. Not that you can be using the same power supply for 10 years in mining, but you might, in my case, I might use it for 3 or 4, and then one of my kids might use it to build, their first gaming computer or something like that. So it's important to me to have a long warranty. It's just reliability. I'm not worried about it breaking, that kind of thing. So again, I'm just going to kind of randomly flip through a couple here on Newegg to kind of show you those. Here's an example in EVGA 1600. When you get into that size, they can get pretty pricey. This is $470 for this particular one, but it is titanium. So just remember back to that efficiency chart we looked at earlier. How much do you save going to titanium versus gold and platinum? And is it worth that kind of a price increase? You might be able, in this case, to do 2 800 watt power supplies for far less than $470. So anyway, that's one of those things you need to figure out on your own. So for this particular one here, you go into specifications. You come down here, it's got a 10-year warranty through EVGA. Here's another random one I picked out. This is an EVGA 750 gold. It's got a 10-year warranty as well. So this one here, you could have 2 of these. How much are these ones? These are 119, so 2 of these would be 220 versus the 470 for this one. So to me, that's a no-brainer. I'd rather go with this right here. And then you need to decide, do you want the gold or the platinum or whatever you want. But this does come with a 10-year warranty, so that's pretty good. Here's a random Seasonic. This is a 750 gold. It also has a 10-year warranty. Here is a Rosewheel. This is a 700 watt. This is a bronze, so it's lower efficiency, but it's only $65. And it only has a 3-year warranty. So again, one of those things you may or may not be important to you. Just something that I usually look for. I would probably shy away from this particular one. I'd really like to see 10 years or at least 7 years. I know a lot of 7 years out there. In this particular one, if you go in the overview, it does give you a pretty nice little description here of all the different connectors you have. It doesn't do this on all the power supplies. I just kind of happened to be looking around and saw this one. So this is your main board connector, this is your CPU connector. Here are your PCI connectors. You got 4 6+2s in this particular one. Your SATA connectors, your Molex, which we don't need a whole lot for this application, and your floppy connectors, 4-pin, which again we don't need for this mining applications very often. So anyway, again, that may or may not be important to you, but I thought I would just kind of bring it up so you guys would be aware of it.
All right, so I think that's just about everything I know about power supplies. So just kind of a quick recap. When you're picking out power supplies, you've got modular, semi-modular, non-modular. Really, any of those will work. Fully modular and semi-modular seem to be the most popular and seem to be the most available, especially in large wattages. We also talked about the connection types. You've got, let's see, you got the main board, the CPU, Molex, SATA, 6-pin, 8-pin, 6+2, kind of all those different options. Also fan headers, 3-pin, 4-pin fan headers as well. So you got to make sure you pay attention to those as to what you need. We talked about how to figure out the wattage that you need for a particular mining rig or desktop computer. Also the power efficiency of gold versus platinum versus titanium, and also the different PCI connectors, how to know how many you need and how many come with each power supply. So I think that's it for power supplies. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hope it was helpful. Please give me a subscribe and a like down below if you did enjoy it. So thank you.